Boomer Dangle, welcome in to yet another edition of the Commissioner Report. I'm your host, Jim Jong-un, the commish. Boom, welcome. Glad to have
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for glad to be back. Glad you're not yet underwater.
you. Yeah,
Jimbo, you and Hunter stay dry and stay safe this week as best you can.
Hurricane Ian Harrington is impending. Within the next couple hours, it'll hit land here in Charleston, and it'll do about as much damage as Ian did in the basement of 206 Walnut Place, which is substantial. But you know what? We can't let that deter our weekly report. And boy, what a week it was. So without further ado, let's kick off the week 3 recap. Boom. Why don't you start us off here?
We'll start with Bird Gang and the upstate upsets. There was an upset against those Buffalo Bills this past weekend. Still think they're the team to beat. If you had to ask right now, who's the team in the AFC? Kansas City looks a little bit off. Buffalo, I know they lost, but that's a tough road game. I think Indianapolis is a sleeper pick, but the path through the AFC is going to still run through Buffalo. Bird Gang improves to 2-1. The upstate upsets predictably dropped to 0-3. Lev sits in 12th bottom of the league. It's not a terrible roster in terms of name recognition, but Alvin Kamara hasn't been there at all this year. I mean, he just hasn't been there at all this season. He brought 6 points to the table. Joe Mixon, who I thought was going to have a shitty season to begin with, and I actually think he's one to watch out for to be injured this season. He brought nothing there too. So the names are there. The follow through, not so much. And Hunter did nothing special, but his guys took care of business this week.
Yeah, I think one little note with Hunter's team, what's interesting is you look at Mahomes here, projected 22 points. He's a top 3 quarterback in just about every single league on a weekly basis. And so, that was the first time we saw the Chiefs get shut down offensively this season. I don't think it'll be the last time, including the Sunday night potentially with a motivated Buccaneers team. But if Mahomes isn't clicking, Hunter still is able to scratch out a win, mostly due to his boy and your boy, I guess, but Cordell Patterson, the Tennessee Volunteer. I'm not sure if you caught this, but he had a little wager with Kyle Pitts. And so Kyle, the Florida Gator, had to wear Tennessee Vols. What was it? Overalls?
The checkered overalls, yeah.
So that was a nice little treat there. But let's move along to probably the trash of our league so far. And yes, Lev doesn't have a win yet, but you know what? At least his points are going up, and we saw some potential with that roster. You know what I don't see much potential with, surprisingly, is Mr. Nino DePasquale and the Bills Mafia. Nino falls to 0-3 with yet another loss and a dismal showing with 68 points. Sebastian also has a juggernaut of a team, but I'm not going to waste breath covering much of that roster. If you do a quick little look at Nino, though, he always gets excited, always tries to draft well, and he was hedging a lot of bets on the hype of certain players. Russell Wilson in a new system with new receivers and a new head coach. Not doing that great. Christian McCaffrey, you know what? Anytime you're returning from an injury or you were injury prone as a running back, I think it's pretty difficult. David Montgomery, I have him in a different league. I don't think he played more than 5 minutes of the game on Sunday. So, right off the bat, Nino's relying on a lot of unreliable guys. And so anytime you do that, you're setting yourself up for disaster. A couple guys on his bench that are curious, DK Metcalf, who's throwing him the ball there. Garrett Wilson, had one big pop weekend against the Browns, but can that be, with Zach Wilson returning this week, can Garrett Wilson be a guy that helps bring Nino his first win? Seb, just fuck you. That team is good, man. You finally built yourself a blue chip caliber roster that's worthy of a championship. I wish, this was the roster that won it for you last year, but I can't find a fault in really anyone that you've got either on your bench, maybe MVS, but like even he could have a decent week.
Seb also sort of backed into this situation because, I'm not going to waste time going back through the draft, but I can pretty well guarantee you he drafted Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts was his backup. And Jalen Hurts is, at least through 4 weeks, putting up an MVP type campaign. And he's really good. I think that team is really good. I think that defense is pretty solid. And I expect him to level off. The question for Seb's going to be, you know, if he and Aaron Rodgers are equal, because
Yeah.
Jalen's playing up and Rodgers is playing down, making a week by week decision on which guy is going to get you the win. But you can't argue with an undefeated run, but it's not like he drafted his way into that. You know, his backup quarterback has won him each of the first 3 games.
He's
I'm
backdoored.
just looking for a chance to shit on Seb.
I love it. Never, please never resist the urge to shit on that man.
I'll
But
also shit on Nino because he sucks.
you got to shit on everyone. Well, let's shit a little bit on Greg. Boom, why don't you take us away with this one?
So Kyler Murray, did just enough to sort of get you over the hump here, Greg, but that's about it. I mean, this team's going to be carried by Derrick Henry all throughout the season. Zeke had a pretty good Monday night game as well. As long as he's healthy, you'll be fine. You get Mike Evans back this week. But this is a team that I'm not overly concerned about. You get Mike Evans back in there. The team's still going to run through Henry, Elliott, Evans. 3 years ago, very dangerous team.
Yeah.
2022, moderately dangerous team. Kyler Murray is the young stud on that roster. And he's just proved to be erratic. Like, I do think that a lot of the offseason bullshit about him studying film and getting the new contract done, I do think that a lot of that has started to get to Kyler. And he's obviously one who's going to listen to noise. On the other side here, Botch, dropping a game by 6 points is nothing to scoff at, but this is a solid lineup. The 1-2 record doesn't reflect it, but this is a solid lineup. Obviously, Josh Allen, can play ball. We all recognize that. Leonard Fournette has turned into a pretty dangerous pass catching tailback as much as a runner and a foil for Tom Brady. That offense just has done nothing so far. And then I want to point out Dameon Pierce sitting on Botch's bench. I actually think this Houston team, they're not going to win 5 games or 6 games this year, but they're better than a lot of people believe that Houston team to be. And I've watched this kid run. He's a pretty good tailback. And they're running a lot because their quarterback is Davis Mills. So I think that's a dangerous piece, sort of sitting in what is that expression? Lying in wait.
Lying in wait. Yep.
Yeah, they think that's a dangerous piece that Botch is sort of sitting. Good, you could trade him. You've got other tailback options, Melvin Gordon, Damian Harris, AJ Dillon. You could trade him for something valuable or just wait for some guys to get hurt. I think this is a solid team, better than the 1-2 record indicates.
Yeah, fun fact on Botch's roster, I think it was draft night or the day after the draft, I offered him Stephon Diggs outright for DJ Moore and Leonard Fournette. Oh, and Stephon Diggs and maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire for DJ Moore and Leonard Fournette. He rejected it, said he wanted to roll the dice and go with his team, had really high hopes for DJ Moore. Nothing against DJ Moore. And honestly, Botch's roster on paper is right up there with Seb's. I just think, you got George Kittle coming back, hopefully later weeks, now that Jimmy G is fully back and getting, into shape, throwing shape. I think Botch is a team that's going to, where he stands in week 3, as opposed to where he's going to stand at the end of the season. He's going to be a playoff team. It's just, beating up on the weaker opponents. I think he's had a pretty tough opening stretch here. But moving right along, let's get to one of the closer games of the weekend. Evans lost Poufineer, Andrew Hansen versus Brent Dangel Cold Showers. Brent with his first win of the season, and he's got, really no one else to thank other than Lamar Jackson for any amount of points in any game that he scores. I played him last week when Lamar had 40. Just fortunately, I had 2 wide receivers that gave me 35 points, so I was a little spoiled that week. But having played Brent in last week, he's got a very solid squad here. Amari Cooper is still getting it done despite having Jacoby Brissett at the helm. Imagine what he's going to do once he's got Deshaun in there. Rashad Bateman is really a roll of the dice every single week, but as just a pure wide receiver threat, like, he's the best receiver on that roster, and Lamar really is not trying to run every single game. He just does it when he has to, especially against New England. Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler, like a very solid 1-2 punch there for him. It's his flex position is where it gets a little shoddy. He's really relying on DeAndre Hopkins to come back. I'm curious to see what the rookie Brian Robinson out of
Yeah.
Alabama does. He was the player who was shot in the leg in an attempted robbery right before the start of the season. And then Alan Lazard, who is quickly becoming Aaron Rodgers' favorite target out of that grab bag of misfits. I think he's a very solid wide receiver 2 player, even a flex play. So a lot of solid options. If any of you owners are watching and want some trade targets, hit up Brent because he's got a few guys there. But 110 enough to get him the first win. Andrew, he's outside of Justin Jefferson, I don't think there's really anything on this roster that gets me excited. Didn't play Tua when Tua had the AFC Offensive Player of the Week against the Ravens 2 weeks ago. Dalton Schultz has been hurt. Kadarius Toney's been hurt. Kenyon Drake is RB3 in that backfield, especially with J.K. Dobbins back. So Andrew, despite really listening to Nino's drop of the gauntlet to bring it this year, he's just he hasn't really built a winner. Do you see anything that catches your eye outside
No,
of these
I think this is an overachieving week for Hanson. Neither of these rosters give me anything to, be upset about on Hanson's team. You get 7 to 10 guys in double digits. That's a great week, but a great week doesn't mean that's a great roster.
Yep, 100%. Now, boom. Let you take yours.
Well, my team is no good. And I'm really sort of confused as to where I made the mistakes on drafting. I think I'm a big believer in Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry's going to bust out, but he's also going to have these games where he scores 3 points. I think he's going to. I was between drafting. I remember at the draft, I was between Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy, and I should have obviously taken Waddle. He's great and on a good team. I think if anybody is attached to this Denver roster right now, they should run the other direction. Denver sucks. Seattle sucked. There are certain rosters to stay away from. And then I guess in reverse, there are some really lousy teams, Detroit, the Jets, that are shit teams, but have really dangerous players on them. Falcons. And so I would say the hell away from anybody on Denver. I do think Jerry will have his big games, but this past week was not one of them. People figured out Debo. People figured it out after last season. And that's he's still going to get his point. He's sort of like Travis Kelce. At this point, people have figured him out. They know exactly what he does, and he's still going to get you 15 fantasy points a game. But that itself doesn't win you very many ball games. Darrell Henderson followed up a great week with a shit. DeAndre Swift, he's been very reliable, very good. But this wasn't necessarily his week. I thought about sliding Singletary in there. It wouldn't have made a difference in the result here too, but a mistake. And Fabi's team is good. I mean, he hasn't had his quarterback produce a whole lot for him, but Nick Chubb is extremely reliable. Jamar Chase, and he's going to get his 9 targets a game. He's going to get his 9 targets a game. And Amon-Ra, which I have in every league besides this one, proves to be very good. He's one of those guys on a shitty team with, they're not going to win a lot of games. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts, but he's going to get some good points. This is a sneaky, dangerous roster, especially Brandon Ayuk on the bench in there. And if you needed to play Cousins instead of Brady, because, we'll get into what Tom's doing later, Jamie, but if you needed to play Cousins, that's a pretty good backup, all things considered, for fantasy purposes. Not if you're trying to win the NFC North, but for fantasy purposes, that's a pretty good backup QB.
100%. One thing I'll note, you mentioned stay away from the Broncos, stay away from the Lions. I'd say the only 2 players on those 2 rosters that are worth having are both on Dan's team. You have 2 guys that are just such, unpredictable enigmas, very talented. I think DeAndre is now hurt for at least a week or so, or 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's going to be down for a minute or 2.
So
they run him so fucking much. He's going to get hurt.
Well, it's true. And so closing out the week in such a fucking heartbreaker. So for those of you that didn't really follow this at all, and why would you? It's not your matchup. I was winning going into the Monday night game, or the Sunday night game, excuse me. Evan and I were going to be tapped out after the Sunday night game. No more players heading into Monday. And so winning by a handful of points, that Broncos defense, you'll see, had 17 fucking points. because the 49ers had to fumble the ball just about every single time they were driving to tie it or take the lead. So one of the more infuriating, this is really, right up there with losing to Seb in the championship on a Chris Boswell 50-yard field goal. Not quite the stakes of that, but obviously a heartbreaker, seeing as I only lost by 0.8 points from a last play of the game fumble in garbage time. Incredibly frustrating, but just a few things I want to highlight, at least with my roster. Justin Herbert injury, I don't know what the fuck to think about a fractured in your rib tissue or your rib cartilage. He looked like a shell of himself. The Jaguars absolutely waxed the Chargers in LA, which was a little bit eye-opening. But Derek Carr, you know what? Very solid as a backup for me. Gave me 19 points. My question marks are Najee Harris. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been, despite trying to get him off my team, he's been one of the top performers at the running back position all season. These are my boys right here. Stephon Diggs and Jalen Waddle will take me as far as I'm going to go. I just need them to both stay healthy. They played each other in that upset where the Bills lost, and Diggs has said he's never been more tired or dehydrated in any sporting event in his life as he was that Sunday. So interesting. Didn't know Miami could take a top athlete like that and make him look pedestrian. But Darren Waller's been disappointing. He's really, I don't think, given me more than 9 points in a single week so far. So hoping he can find it with Carr. But Curtis Samuel has been a nice little piece. Jamal Williams on the bench, I'm hoping steps in for DeAndre. As you can see, he had a pretty big day once DeAndre stepped out, and he's always their red zone guy. Not opposed to trading Jamal, not opposed to trading Curtis, throwing some feelers out there. Yeah.
I'll say this, outside of Sebastian's team, and which is relatively reliant on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Unless Aaron Rodgers starts to pick it back up and look like the MVP, these are the two best teams in the league. And I can, look at all the bench points that were left on the bench for both these. And that's with Jacoby Myers out, like 56 bench points, 68 bench points. Yeah. Those are big ass numbers. So you guys are deep. I'm still pissed about the Jalen Waddle thing. I mean, it was a great selection. I just chose wrong between Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle. I just made the wrong choice. It was 50-50.
It's okay, Boom. I will forgive you. And, I enjoyed my season with Jalen.
I'm sure.
But one I want to highlight quickly, though, is a rookie, Chris Olave in New Orleans. Who he's actually going to play. For those of you who don't know, there's a London game on Sunday. And so he's playing at 9:30 Eastern time. The Saints are playing the Vikings, I want to say. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Olave has quickly become, despite having a healthy Michael Thomas, Jameis's favorite target. He's a hell of a route runner, was probably the best route runner in that draft class that came out this year. And we're now starting to see that production ensue, also on the trading block if anyone wants him. Tony Pollard, I also think, has fully outpaced Zeke as the top scoring back in that backfield. He's so fucking dangerous. And I don't want to talk about Evan's team because he backed his way into that win. But you know what? Solid squad. Like Tyreek and Jalen are 1A and 1B. They're pretty much the same thing. Christian Kirk, if he can perform and become Trevor Lawrence's favorite target, hey, we'll see where Jacksonville can go this season. Like the AFC South is truly a toss-up. But Mark Andrews is still, in my opinion, the best tight end in the league. Evan always seems to have him, maybe outside of 1 or 2 years. One thing to note before we head into week 4 here, Boom, Jonathan Taylor missed practice yesterday for the first time, whether it was in high school, college, or in the NFL, missed practice with a toe injury. So whoever's playing Evan, which we will look at in 1 second, good luck. So moving along to week 4 preview show, and I got out of it. Hold on.
Well, while you try to orient,
I try to figure this shit out.
I got a question for you because I know you're a big X's and O's guy, and you watch a lot of film and like to think about these things. So, Deebo Samuel and Cordero Patterson have, and to a certain extent Taysom Hill, but far lesser, have become the running back moving to tailback spot and have been pretty much fantasy football like cheat codes and hacks over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Is there anybody physically or anybody that you see who is a sleeper that their team might put them in the backfield a little bit to start taking handoffs the way that Cordero and Deebo Samuel have made that transition? Like whoever that person is, I think that's a good sleeper selection to either pick up or start, putting on your roster. but I don't know who that person would be. You got to have some physicality. You got to have a lot of physicality. You got to be able to take hits, and obviously you got to have the speed to turn the corner on everybody too. Who is that?
That's a great question, Boom, and something that you think about until you really see it utilized. You don't know if a guy can do that. One guy that I know, and especially with DeAndre Swift being hurt, Amon-Ra St. Brown takes a lot of that scat back position reps for them. They'll use a little jet sweep motion, give him the handoff, similar to what they get started with Debo. Debo now motions into the backfield, given the 49ers running back situation. But there are a few teams. You got to look at the offensive coordinator and how they are able to coach that, because I think for a lot of players, like Debo he was just a stud at South Carolina. He did a little bit of everything. So like Alvin Kamara at Tennessee and Alabama did a little bit of everything. But these guys who start off as pass catchers turning into rushers, it's far harder because a lot of the guys don't understand the contact balance of when they're hitting the hole, how to actually hit a cut within, between the tackles versus on the outside when you're just making defensive backs who don't like to tackle miss. Without just like having some dead air here and thinking, I want to highlight. Let's see, is there like Joshua Palmer with the Chargers is an interesting guy to me.
Yeah.
Another Tennessee ball, but
That's what I was. Yeah, we're good at that. No, that's a good point because I was thinking the Chargers sort of have the offense for that. They also have their vertical threats pretty well laid out. So
Yep.
if you're going to offset a vertical threat with a scat back, the Chargers offense is what came to mind for me as well.
And I'm curious too. Just and before we go into week 4 here, Debo, I want to say was like Kyle Shanahan is brilliant. He's probably the best offensive mind in football. I think he's better than Sean McVay and taught him what he knows. But Kyle, out of necessity, had to create a running package for Debo originally because he didn't have the benefit of having a bell cow running back like a Leonard Fournette or a Saquon or what have you. And so if you want to look at it, look at the teams that don't have that guy or have a guy that's very injury prone there. And if it's, the Chicago Bears, I don't think Darnell Mooney is able to be that guy, especially with Matt Eberflus as the offensive coordinator or as the head coach there, who's defensively minded and really cares about keeping it low scoring. So you're trying to match make there with like the creative offensive minds. The Giants, Kadarius Toney could be that guy if he ever stays fucking healthy. Wan'Dale Robinson, the rookie out of Kentucky, who I'm sure you watched a little bit, could be that guy too. But both are just so injury prone, it kind of negates the physicality aspect that you mentioned. But you know what? That's a great question. I'm going to think more on it and bring some guys like that are actually proven in next week. But why don't we go into to the week 4 preview with what time we have remaining here? Boom. And why don't you kick us off with this little matchup here? Probably the biggest matchup of the week.
Biggest matchup of the week. Who's trying to stay out of the cellar? And Jamie, the projection on this dead even down to the 10th of a point, 108.7, 108.7. But I'm here to tell you that Nino's team is going to win this game and win it handily. The projection is inaccurate on this one. You sort of got to see it. Alvin Kamara has the ability to single-handedly win you a game, but he's a big momentum back. He builds game after game after game. And 2-3 seasons ago, when he was single-handedly winning fantasy football games for people, he was rattling those off in huge chunks. 4 straight great games, 5 straight great games. He's also streaky in the other direction. Ben, I wish I had pulled you aside, buddy. I should have talked to you. The team that loses the Super Bowl, everybody knows it's a team that loses the Super Bowl always has a shitty next sort of season. Yeah. But Mixon and Higgins especially would have been the 2 guys I'd stay away from. Burrow and Chase, I'm there on those guys this year. But Mixon and Higgins, I would have stayed away from both of them. I wish I'd pulled you aside and said something, but then again, I'll probably beat you because of it. I just think Mixon, remember, they played 3 extra football games last year. They played 4 extra football games last year, as opposed to everybody else. They played a season and a quarter last year. So those guys took a lot of hits, had a short off season. And there are 4 extra games with a wide open playbook, every play that the Cincinnati Bengals have for teams to watch and scout them.
Exactly.
Burrow and Chase, I like. Mixon and Higgins, I probably would have stayed away from. Nino with an easy victory.
And I think one thing we'll know a lot about how this game's going to go after tonight with both Mixon and T going
Yeah.
for Lev if they don't have a big game, which I like. The Dolphins defense doesn't get enough credit, but it is very good. I think I agree. Nino is going to roll and get his first win, despite all the shit we're going to talk on that little bitch. Next up, team up dog Greg Spry taking on Bird Gang. Hunter Mitchell. Another close fucking projection here. Ooh. Really, what I like about Hunter's squad is the Mahomes, Cordero, Dalvin. I saw he was hurt and didn't finish the game last week. I'm not sure. You see the little cue there. I'm not sure what his status is going to be, but really it's reliant on two quarterbacks that are unpredictable as hell in terms of who they're going to throw to. With Allen Robinson, it's very clear Stafford loves Cooper Kupp, and Cooper Kupp. He's going to find that's his guy. Allen he's never really flourished anywhere, maybe outside of Chicago for a brief little stint, but there's a reason why he's on his third team in as many, 6 years as an NFL professional. So unreliable there. Devontae has not really proven that, he can have the same success with Derek Carr as he had with Aaron Rodgers, at least not yet. So you look at Greg's squad over here, and, a lot of what you said about Kyler is true. And when you get paid at the quarterback position and you're still immature and you love the video game, it kind of takes away from your work ethic. There is some truth to that, but you look at Derrick Henry, stud. He's really got to carry the Titans as far as they're going to go. The Titans are not out of it by any means, especially beating the Raiders last week to get their first win. I love Mike Williams and what he's built with Justin Herbert. I think he's honestly more valuable than Keenan Allen, who, God damn it, Andrew, I can't believe you dropped him for nothing.
I know. What the fuck was that?
Fucking bullshit. Tyler Lockett, gross. Get him out of there, Greg. Hopefully, I don't have to text and remind you that Mike Evans is back. But another guy I really like is Gabe Davis this season. I think Josh Allen needs to find the yang to Stephon Diggs' yin, and that's Gabe Davis. So I like Greg to upset Bird Gang in this one.
Yeah, you gotta get Lockett out of there. Gotta get Mike Evans in.
Get him out. All right, boom.
Get him out.
Take it.
Defending champ and Brent Dombaugh, two good gentlemen. That's all I'll say. Seb and Brent, two good gentlemen. The projections right now have Sebastian to roll into a 4-0 victory. I do like that pick. However, I think Jalen Hurts' clock is going to hit midnight here pretty soon.
Yeah,
I think this might be the last game. I mean, he's got Jacksonville. I think this might be the last game where he looks invincible, where he's sort of in that top tier quarterback status for fantasy football. And I think that the only thing to monitor in this weekend's slate of games is how does Jalen fall off, and does Aaron Rodgers start to look like Aaron Rodgers again? Because that's a big storyline for Seb's team. There's just nothing on Brent's roster that makes me go, wow. Travis Kelce, he could have a 30-point game. Lamar Jackson, he could have a 30-point game. I think these are two really bad matchups for them, however.
Yeah.
Baltimore against Buffalo and then Kelce against Tampa Bay. So I just don't see it happening.
Agreed. I think the only thing that's interesting is that Khalil Herbert is on his bench. If I'm Brent, I'm throwing him in that flex position because David Montgomery's hurt yet again. And Khalil had a hell of a day when he came in to replace David. Another note is with Saquon for Seb, the Bears' rush defense is one of the best in the league because of Roquan Smith, the former Georgia linebacker. They targeted Saquon. That was a team that they played when he tore his knee the first time. So maybe there's a little PTSD. Maybe he goes off. I think he gets shut down and does not have as big of a week, which is why Brent might make it a little bit closer here. But let's move on to your game. Boom. You want to take yours? Or?
Yeah, I mean, my roster really does blow, but this might be, I don't know. With Swift out, it's going to become even harder. I might scour the waiver wire, might try to make a trade before Sunday. I think my time is up on that one. No, I'm not going to put Julio in the game if that's what you're indicating. I
dropped him just for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did make a substitution earlier today to get Elijah Moore in there because I think the Jets are going to upset the Steelers this weekend, but it's not going to matter a whole lot. I mean, this is This is going to be a tough season for me. I screwed around, didn't draft a quarterback, and it shows. And it
Well,
shows. So
that's
I was
all
trying
right,
to coach
Boom.
little leaguers while we were drafting. I was trying to coach
Yeah,
the little league
exactly.
team.
And you hopped on the Zoom too. So
Yeah.
at least you made the effort. In the sake of, I'm not sure if you can see this little timer, but we
Yeah, I
only have
got you.
7 minutes going. So I'm going to go probably the second biggest matchup of the week, besides the two in the basement, are the two undefeated. One of these handsome, strong guys are going to have a loss. So Evan stealing Dan's team name. Dan really trying at fantasy, more concentrated than he ever has been for a draft. And I like both of these rosters quite a bit. Having played Evan last week, I know how dangerous he can be. And saying that, I still think you look at Dan's roster. Dan's projected to lose by 3 points, but I think the guys on Dan's roster, assuming Dawson Knox and Amon Ra are playing and can be healthy, I think that I'm going to give the edge to Dan in an upset, but he's undefeated, so it's not that much of an upset. I would put that Rams defense in there, my friend, not the Giants, but we'll see what he does. But I like Dan to get his fourth win and tie Seb as the only other undefeated team.
Yeah.
Let's take
Evan,
us home here.
I might do something about that Denver Broncos defense. There are
Yeah,
better defenses
drop
available.
drop it like it's hot right there.
There are better defenses available. Jimbo gets the pleasure of playing Andrew Hansen, favored by 3 scores. Listen, I mean, the big question mark here is Herbert.
Yep.
What's going on with him? And if he takes a big hit or two, what's going to happen there? I mean, how ironic is it that Herbert's injury is a rib injury, and this is the team that punctured Tyrod Taylor's lung accidentally? So let's just hope that we can stay away from those sorts of matters. I think the roster is good here. Justin Jefferson does have the ability on any given day to go for 35, 40 points. But that might be the only thing that would concern me here. Jamie, you probably should be 3-0, moving to 4-0 this week, but I like you to easily coast into a 3-1 standing.
Thank you, Boom. I can't disagree. That was very well said. And let's take it into just a little look at the standings as we wrap up today's show, and then let Boom cover some picks with the last couple of minutes here. And guys, you look at the top 3 teams undefeated: Dan, Evan, Sebastian. But really what I look at is points for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's sort that. Seb, 394 points through 3 weeks is fucking ridiculous. It's about 130 points per week, which is, if he can keep that pace up, he's going to run away with the 1 seed. But as we know, you can have the 1 seed and still lose in the playoffs. It really doesn't matter. But just, it shows you a little bit of what he's faced. I have the second and most. So Brent has the most points scored against him. I have the second most points scored against me, but also the second highest points for. One little anecdote there is just that usually means once I start to play the trimmer rosters this season, it should allow me to separate a little bit more, which I'm looking forward to. I've just faced a couple teams that have put up a lot of points thus far, including Brent, who dropped like 140 on me. But yeah, anyone stick out to you, Boom? Anyone you want to highlight, or you want to go right into the picks here?
No, I'm disappointed in myself because as a champion, as a former champion of the league, to be second to last in points scored and really not have that many points put up against me is pretty disappointing in myself. But no, I mean, I think we've identified the 3 best teams in this league, and who would make the playoffs today.
Yep.
One quick note: through 3 weeks of the NFL, there have been 28 games that have gone under. There have been 19 games that have gone over. I expect this to be the week where it starts to even out and level off a little bit. I'd be looking for a very over heavy week. Last week was 9-7, 9 overs, 7 under. So it started to switch in the other direction, started to level off. General rule of thumb, and the way that I bet, I always go for 8-8, or I always go for 500 on overs and unders. And at season's end, it usually always works out that way. So the ones that I'm most particularly looking at tonight, big one tonight. I'm looking for a lot of points tonight, and expecting that. But I've also got that Jets Steelers game,
Yeah.
which has dropped a point on me now. I think you can find it at 40.5 or 41. I got it at 41.5. So no great line value there. But yeah, I think that, or yeah, it's back at 41.5 there too.
Yeah.
I like the Jets to upset the Steelers at home, but I also think there will be a lot of points scored both tonight and in that ball game.
Love it. Anything else catch your eye? I mean, outside of the betting lines, guys, Bills Ravens is going to be a great game. Those are two playoff teams, two 2-1 teams that have both lost to the Dolphins as their only loss there. So a game to watch. Patriots Packers. You know what? Mac Jones not playing. I really wish he was in there just so we could get a true test of where the Patriots stand this year, because I think they're always kind of a gray area until about week 7 or 8 when they find their run game, and the rest of the league has gotten injured enough for them to catch up. But then that Sunday night game should be a doozy with the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. It is going to be played in Tampa.
Yep.
That's been confirmed. But other than that, maybe Commanders Cowboys. This Cowboys team, having watched the Monday night game pretty closely, their defense is Micah Parsons is a freak of nature. DeMarcus Lawrence gets slept on now that Micah Parsons is having such a good season, but they're good, man.
Let me say this about the Cowboys, and I meant to bring this up earlier. CeeDee Lamb has such a reputation for being a burner, for being a downfield threat or be running end arounds and stuff. He single-handedly on one drive, like ran through a dude, or willed his way to a first down, and then bowled over a guy at the goal line. For somebody who's sort of like wiry and known for being a burner, he really impressed the hell out of me in that game, being super physical.
And I would say if they didn't have Tony Pollard, that's another guy to your question to get more involved. I just don't think he ever did it at Oklahoma. A lot of these guys that did it in high school, so it's like, if they do it in college, then maybe it's something that they have the pedigree to do. He did not. He was more of just a mid to deep level threat and just has ridiculous range and catch control. So, but with that, Boom, I want to thank you. I don't want it to cut us off. I want to thank you for joining us, guys. That was another week of the Commissioner's Report. Boomer, you're cordially invited on any future episodes. You just let me know, brother. All right.
Thank you, my friend. Everybody stay safe this week.
God bless.